years on the staff of Senator Richard Bluger, but we're fortunate now to have her here as the Executive Director of the LUM Immigration Clinic and the Program Director for Healthy Families and Sustainable Communities. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Susan.
All right.
It's an honor to be with you today. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the Immigration Clinic and its context. I also want to provide you later on some information regarding immigration in general. In 2012, LUM was beginning to sense that it was being called to welcome the stranger in a new way. Factors that drew the board's attention to this issue of immigration included national conversation and tone regarding immigration reform. Tippecanoe County has the 5th largest Latino Hispanic population in the state. Frankfort, which is just over the county line, has nearly a 50% Hispanic Latino student body population. Purdue University has the 2nd highest number of foreign students in a university in the country. And Greater Lafayette is home to a large number of foreign-owned manufacturers. LUM's response, informed by its mission to welcome the stranger and recognizing the Greater Lafayette area's growing immigrant population, the LUM board engaged in a comprehensive study of immigration in 2012. At the conclusion of the study, the board issued this statement. We affirm Lafayette Urban Ministry as a social justice ministry. We believe and advocate for maintaining principles of equality, human rights, and dignity for all. We advocate for basic services of life, health, and education, and well-being for children and adults who need our services regardless of immigration status. We oppose policies that separate families. We support exploring pathways to citizenship for immigrants. In response, in 2012, LUM decided to open an immigration clinic. In 2013, LUM was approved for membership in the Catholic Legal Immigration Network. In 2014, LUM was recognized to represent clients before Department of Homeland Security by the Board of Immigration Appeals. The Immigration Clinic's mission includes fostering a welcoming community and providing confidential law services to help low-income and vulnerable immigrants navigate complex immigration processes. We are committed to ensuring that our program meets quality standards and practices. LUM is recognized by the Board of Immigration Appeals and is authorized, as I said before, to represent clients in immigration matters before DHS. And as part of that, again, by being a member of the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, we're able to receive technical support and continuing education from staff and experienced immigration attorneys. Clinic also requires that its members maintain professional code of conduct and standards. And there's one more safeguard. We are supervised by a licensed attorney. She's a volunteer, by the way. And we're looking for volunteers along those lines. Services provided by the LUM Immigration Clinic include screening clients to determine eligibility for immigration benefits, answering client questions regarding the application processes, assisting clients fill out immigration forms, and connecting clients with other services. Some of these other services include English classes, tax assistance, and referrals to other legal service providers. It's the goal of the Immigration Clinic to meet with everyone who requests an intake appointment and to practice due diligence in screening each client for every potential benefit. If a case exceeds the expertise and services we are able to provide under the scope of our BIA accreditation, who will provide the client with contact information for other legal services providers. The main application types that we assist with include application for permanent residence, humanitarian parole, deferred action for childhood arrivals. You may have heard it as part of the DREAM Act, President's executive action in place or in lieu of the DREAM Act, naturalization applications, and victims of trafficking and violence cases, or VAWA cases. Our scope of our services is limited to family-based and humanitarian applications. In addition to providing help with the naturalization classes or naturalization applications, we are also offering naturalization classes, and we had our first 2 last fall. Yes?
What is humanitarian parole?
It's many times it's to allow someone to come here who needs a medical treatment for a short time that they cannot receive in their own country. There are other types of where parole is used if someone is being persecuted, or if it would be problematic for them to return home to their home country. It includes lots of different things, but the way I first think of humanitarian parole is to allow someone to come here who needs to for medical services or for something else that they can't receive in their own country, with the expectation that they will return after they receive those services.
Good question.
So type of cases that LUM cannot handle are cases before the immigration court, including deportations and removals. So our scope of our authority does not include that. Hopefully in the future we will be able to include that, but not at this time. We are always looking for volunteers before our clinic. Some of the type of volunteers that we need are attorneys or persons who happen to be accredited by the Board of Immigration Appeals, program assistants, translators, interpreters, and greeters. We are very flexible with our scheduling and would welcome whatever amount of time someone could give us. Volunteer types, as I said before, are the ones listed above. In addition to those, we're also looking for people to help us with our citizenship classes, or to be ambassadors. And this is something as a club you might be willing to do, either one or more group, to attend our class, to learn a little bit about what our new citizens have to go through to become naturalized, and also to welcome them, to say that this is something you're excited about and that you're glad that they're going through this process. So I know you've probably heard the tenor of things that are discussed with regards to immigrants. And sometimes it's just nice to know that they're embraced by the community. And if you want to learn more about this, please let me know afterwards. So I'll tell you a little bit about I'm sure you know what an attorney does, so I'll tell you a little bit about the other 4 volunteer types. One is a program assistant. They would assist with administrative tasks, such as returning phone calls, responding to emails, data entry, filing, copying, and note-taking. The second type of translator that we need, pretty self-explanatory. This person is a translator. They provide English transcripts of foreign documents, which are required by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Any document submitted to USCIS with information in a foreign language must be accompanied by a full English translation, and the translator must certify that the English translation is complete and accurate, and that he or she is competent to translate from the foreign language into English. This does not have to be a professional. It's just somebody who's competent to translate. And again, interpreter is pretty self-explanatory. They facilitate communication and understanding between clients and program assistants, attorneys, and accredited representatives during intake and follow-up appointments. In the future, we hope to be able to offer evening hours, so this person would greet and provide initial instructions to clients when they come in. So this is the part where I just wanted to provide you with some general information. Hold on. There are 3 basic types of immigration. It's non-immigrant, which person comes here temporarily. Then there's immigrant, that's people who stay here permanently and And then there's a third type, which is humanitarian, we kind of talked about earlier. These can be both temporary and permanent in nature. Non-immigrant status examples, people who are coming here temporarily, these include visitors, people who come and visit briefly, students, short-term employment, that could be either professional or skilled, multinational executives, cultural exchange visitors, and investors. And as I move forward, most of these categories require that at the time that you apply for your visa at the consulate, you have to prove to the consular officer who is interviewing you that you will return within the time frame that you indicated at the time of your visa. So you're applying. So if you cannot show that you have something that compels you beyond a shadow of a doubt to return to your country, under law you're supposed to be denied the visa, and the burden of proof is on you and not the United States government to prove that. So it can be very difficult for a lot of people to receive visas to come to the United States, especially people who are low income or don't have very much status in their own country. The other type, as we talked about, humanitarian visas, visas include parole, the type that I described before, deferred action for childhood arrivals, deferred action, it was part of the President's second executive order on immigration, deferred action for parental accountability, which is not yet, but it's maybe in the future, victims of domestic abuse, and witnesses in criminal cases. So now we moved on to immigrant visa categories, and that's permanent, people here on green cards. These divide down into family, employment, diversity, and again, humanitarian. So this is the breakdown of immigration. People here permanently by category. 65% of the people that are here, which is intentional, are here because of family connections. About 16% of the people who are here are based on employment. 8% refugees, asylees. The visa lottery, maybe some of you know about it, because we want to keep the diversity, the sort of the mix, that vegetable soup that we have here, that everything's even and we don't have people from any one country that's predominant. We allow for those countries that don't give us enough immigrants based on employment and family to come here through the diversity lottery. So about 5% of people that are here came here through the visa lottery, and then about 5% of people who were successful in their cases before the immigration courts. Family-based immigration. This includes people who can petition for their relatives. This includes spouses of United States citizens, minor children of United States citizens, parents of U.S. citizens. We also allow for people to petition for spouses and minor children of permanent residents, adult children of permanent residents, married, it's the same, married children of U.S. citizens and adult children of U.S. citizens, and siblings of U.S. citizens can all come here on relative-based petitions. Now this is older, but this was just kind of use it from, kind of give you a benchmark. In September of 2014, let's just, in the F1 category, which is adult children of U.S. citizens, the people that were coming now to receive visas had filed petitions in 2004. So that was in 10 years for that to happen. And then also, let's say, siblings of citizens from the Philippines, which is the F4 category, the bottom. The U.S. citizen originally filed that petition March 15th, 1991. So that's how long it takes for a lot of people to come here legally. So this is just a glance over employment-based visas. These are pretty much the types. First preference, and this is no wait for those. Persons of extraordinary ability in the arts, sciences, education, business or athletics, outstanding professors and researchers, and multinational executives and managers. Second preference, generally no wait, members of the professions holding advanced degrees or persons of exceptional abilities in the science, arts, or business. And the third preference then is skilled shortage workers with at least 2 years of experience or training. Most of these are people who have some sort of degree. We only allow for people to come here who are sort of low to no skill for a very temporary period of time, and that's again a temporary type of visa, and you have to show that the job itself is temporary in nature. You asked it before, humanitarian types. This also includes, especially as people who are coming here permanently, refugees, asylees, and battered spouses and children and parents. We talked a little bit about the diversity visa, which is the lottery. I'll skip through that. Here's the last thing I want to touch upon. You don't have it up there, but it's the Legal Immigration and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, which was the last major piece of immigration policy or immigration legislation. That bill tightened immigration controls considerably. It introduced the concept of unlawful presence in the United States, which is presence which has not been sanctioned by the appropriate visa category. It has severely restricted the avenues of relief, particularly in the area of criminal convictions. It has also introduced a new system of removal. I'm sorry.
You need to go down and click it back into the show.
Okay.
How do I do that to get back to the...
He's working on it. You need to.
Give us a,
Slideshow, I need a slideshow.
I don't think you need that for me to explain. I'm going to explain to you those bars again. The 3-year bar requires that anyone wishing to obtain legal status in the United States who originally entered without inspection, without a visa but stayed stayed more than 6 months but less than a year, must leave the United States for 3 years before they can even get legal status in the United States. So if you came here without a visa, or if you overstayed and you've been in the United States for more than 6 months but less than a year, you must leave the United States, wait 3 years, and then be considered for a visa to come back in legally. The same thing is true if you've been here for more than a year and you did not come in with a visa, or you overstayed by more than a year, then you have to leave for 10 years to be considered for a visa and come back in. So it's a lot of people, that's not really an answer to how for them in their current life situation, is to leave with the expectation that they would come back after 10 years, especially if they have family in the United States or other connections. A lot of the things that I find interesting is 3 and 10 year bars prevent persons who would otherwise be eligible for benefits from obtaining legal status. So many of the people that enter the United States without visas through siblings or other relatives are now eligible, would otherwise be eligible now for some sort of legal status. The 3 and 10 year bars raise the cost of leaving the United States, and consequently more, as I said, more undocumented immigrants stayed longer. Many people say that half the people that are here now would not have been here if we would not have introduced those bars, because they would have left the United States, and with the idea that they, at some point they might have been able to come back legally. But it's more of a disincentive to leave and come back knowing that you have to stay out 10 years. And that's sort of, people ask based on these things I just told you. So who do you help, and can you help the people that are here undocumented, is the questions that we get all the time. And the answer is yes, we might be able to help a few. We estimate that between 1% and 5% of the people here undocumented, we might be able to, there's a legal remedy for those people. Examples of undocumented aliens eligible for benefits who have not yet submitted applications, who may be currently undocumented, include spouses of United States citizens who are not subject to any other type of inadmissibility, like may have committed some sort of criminal act while they were here, including DWIs. Then there are also people who entered without inspection or benefits of approved immigrant petitions that were filed before April 30th, 2001. There was an exception in law during that time. So if you were the beneficiary of a petition that was filed at that time, and it's just now becoming current where that, I told you about the wait times for those visas, it's now just becoming current. You could stay in the United States and just pay an extra $2,000 and be able to adjust your status here. And persons who have a pathway to permanent residence or citizenship, like maybe they have it, they know they have a pathway to citizenship or a permanent residence, but they just can't afford the attorney to help them through that. We can help them through that process as well. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Susan. Thank
Hello.
you.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of the immigration law is technical. So if you could just address two of the most common instances that are at least in common discussion. So if someone is undocumented and they come into the United States, could you please address what happens, number one, if they marry a U.S. citizen or someone that is a permanent resident U.S. citizen? Or number two, if they have a child here, how that changes or could change their legal status?
So if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you entered undocumented, there is a pathway for you without having to wait out the 10 years to come back in. It's very narrow in scope, because if you've crossed more than once, you're not eligible for this. You're subject to what's called a permanent bar. But if you only crossed once and you have no other inadmissibilities, you can file for something called a waiver of unlawful status. And so you go through the process, and I'm going to walk through the process as just asked. So what people who file for their relatives to come to the United States, they begin the process by filing what's called an alien relative petition with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Again, that's an agency of the Department of Homeland Security. It is pretty much just attesting to the fact that this is a relative who is eligible for this benefit. They are indeed your spouse, and you are not currently married to somebody else. And you indeed are a U.S. citizen. That's what they're really looking for at that point. So that takes about 6 months for those types of petitions. And so U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, if they approve it, they send that approved petition to the National Visa Center in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. At that point, you're starting to apply for what's actually called a visa. And you're going to have to provide some documentation related to your vital information, as well as the fact that you can, as a U.S. citizen, you can support this person in the United States, because back in the late 90s, I believe, we said that we were no longer going to have people come here and the United States government support your relative if you come here. You're going to have to prove that you can do that on your own, and we're not only going to prove it, but we're going to hold you accountable. So if that person goes on food stamps or any other public benefit, we're going to come back and bill you for that money. So if you can't show that you can do that, then you're going to find the co-sponsor who will do that for you. So once you establish those things, if you can't pay for it, you have either the sponsor if you can pay for it, or you and a co-sponsor. You're about ready then to apply for your visa. Now, if you are barred from the United States at this point, there's a new provision called a Provisional Waiver, because it used to be that you had to leave the United States, have your visa interview, then be told that you're not eligible for a visa because you're subject to the bar, and you have to wait for the waiver process to get approval, even though you're subject to the bar, to wait for that outside the United States. But now you don't have to do that. There's a provisional waiver where you can apply for that prior to leaving the country and applying for the visa, if you meet the threshold of what's called extreme hardship. And if you meet that threshold, then that's approved. That application for a provisional waiver, you send it off right before you apply for your visa. You send it off to USCIS, and USCIS makes sure that you have some sort of extreme hardship. This is not just the hardship of being separated from your spouse, not the hardship from being away from your spouse and all the emotion that would cause. You have to prove that you have some sort of condition that would be that you could not survive without that person being here. And generally, people don't have that one factor, but it's a combination of factors that makes you overcome or be able to supersede that threshold of extreme hardship. It's a lot of documentation. We are doing our first one right now, and because it takes a lot of work. We've been working on it for about 6-7 months. I have someone assisting me, but I would say that when we get done, that paperwork is going to be about that high to make sure that we prove to USCIS that that person has extreme hardship. And we go to people like school counselors, doctors, if the person has some sort of mental health condition, Wabash Valley. We're going to try to prove it every which way and loose that that person either couldn't go to Mexico and live with their spouse, that they couldn't be separated from their spouse, and that there are other people in the family who would incur a hardship, and therefore the principal U.S. citizen, because those people were incurring a hardship, would be stressed about the whole thing, and it would be difficult for them to exist. So we're going to prove it every which way and loose to show that extreme hardship, and that just takes a lot of time. And then finally after that, if you get the provisional waiver, you apply for you finish the paperwork up with the National Visa Center. You're told that you have an interview date in, let's just say Mexico, in Ciudad Juarez, where our embassy is there. I'm not our embassy, but the consulate that processes immigrant visas is there, right over the border. You have your interview. You're told within 24, 48 hours, generally the same time, whether or not it's approved, and you can come right back to the United States. When you come back in the United States, you then have your immigrant visa, which is same as, AKA, a green card permanent residence. Did I answer that? And then as a child, really a child, if you enter the United States undocumented and you have a child here in the United States, that child can petition for you when the child turns 21. However, I've just told you about the fact that in order to be able to become legal in the United States, if that petition was filed after April 30th, 2001, that you have to have a waiver. A child cannot file a waiver for an undocumented person. Only a parent can file a waiver. So that, in this case that you just mentioned, where a child, that child cannot bring his or her parents in the United States legally.
How do you find the undocumented people or identify them?
It's not possible to identify. People want to keep that close to the vest as possible. So how do I try to, if you ask me, how do we try to market? We try to go out to broad spectrum of people, and maybe they might themselves be impacted, or they might be able to share that information with people that they know might be served by our clinic. And we try to put that word out there so that people start to know. So we're beginning our sort of marketing. Kind of, I've just told you 2 years. We started do this 20 hours a week along with another aspect of my job for LUM. But we're going to start to go to churches and other places where you might hit a lot of people who could then share that information with people that they know might be helped. And I try to link up with other organizations such as the Latino Center for Wellness and Education and things like that. Do we have a limit?